Good afternoon. My name is Gillian Balaban, and I am Governance and Board Liaison at GRI. Welcome to this meeting of the Global Sustainability Standards Board, known by its acronym, the GSSB, held on 26 February 2026. This virtual meeting is being hosted from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Please note that all public GSSB meetings are being recorded, and you can find the audio recording on the GSSB meeting webpage, along with high-level summaries of previous GSSB meetings. Present from the GRI Secretariat today are Bastian Butt, Chief of Standards, Claire Dugan, Senior Manager Standards, and Peter Dawkins, Senior Manager Standards. We will now start a roll call. Anna Nefedova.
Present.
Anne Lindsay.
Present.
Charles Chu.
Present.
Thank you. Chilandra De Silva.
Present.
Deborah Ing. We'll come back to Deborah. Felipe Martinez Rodriguez.
Present.
Igazuma Okoroba.
Present.
Thank you. Jeff Robertson.
Present.
Rebecca Coriat.
Present.
Homu Machiba.
Present.
Yan Dong.
Present.
Susanna Muscat-Gorska,
Present.
and GSSB Chair Carol Adams.
Present, and I can see that Deborah is also present.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. GSSB members Julia Genuardi and Galia Tusenkova sent their apologies. I will now hand over to the Chair, Carol Adams, to open the meeting.
Thank you very much, Gillian, and very nice to be with you all again. We start, as usual, with the standard business, but first of all, we have a summary of our electronic vote. There's no need to discuss this. It's just a summary of the votes to complete the record. We then have the action register, and I'll invite anyone from the standards division to comment on any updates since the last meeting on work completed or progress on ongoing work. Bastian?
Yes, maybe we have provided the items, but we can maybe just quickly go. We haven't done slides. Go over this. So what we try to do here is to now signal all the things that have been completed, and those that importantly are still pending, of course. So for the first two, this hasn't changed from last time. We're still working towards SGI overall, the approach to regulator-focused narrative. That's something that the policy team has a lead on. And as I mentioned before, they're also restructuring as a team. We're backfilling a position, and they will pick this up as they have the right capacity. For the work on the guidance for identifying risks and opportunities, we have moved through the case studies, the global systems paper, the project proposal, importantly. But while we have advanced in the background research that is preparing for the project, because of capacity reasons, we have not been in a position to nominate a staff person to lead the project as a manager. So this is still pending, but we're continuing also with the help of GSB members research, and that is something we will be bringing back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you. On this slide, before you go on to the next one, the global systems paper number 2, that's marked as ongoing.
Oh, sorry, it should be completed. Yeah, that's
So it
no.
is the one we approved in November then, that
Yeah,
is what.
no, it's completed. Yeah. Sorry, that's our oversight. Yeah, I hope that on the next. I'm not sure whether that was also wrong in the document, but the first three are completed. We've looked at the project proposal and everything. Now we're really ready to activate the capacity. Next slide, please. So we have had deliverables regarding the labor standards, right? And Harold and team will update as part of the outreach that we had for the public consultations. They will update the GSB on that. We have had the policy options paper in front of you last year. And that's something that we're taking back also in terms of a discussion on how potential changes to the standards could look like. Also there's an interaction with the policy team, and we right now simply don't have the resources to advance that file structurally. But we will come back with an updated version of that paper at some stage in the next months. There will be an update to the planning as well that I will be providing in the March meeting, and then we'll make it part of it. And then next slide. We've completed the follow-up in relation to the explanatory memo that was stemming from our in-person meeting. And there is still pending work on the interrelated disclosures in the labor project. That is something that the labor team will also bring back was the next discussion on the standards. And then there is a follow-up for us to document the learnings from the alignment project. And that is something that we've done on the staff level, but we have to bring it in the right form to also communicate to you how we envision to run future alignment projects. And I think that concludes, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe there was one more. Jill, was there one more slide for us to cover? Yeah, sorry. So we are still looking at the proposal for the compact sector standards, and we have completed the work insofar that we are testing or have tested it in conversation with reporters and invited feedback. There are also consultants that assist preparers, and Harika will be in the private session later to update around that. And the last piece was a minor item that was an update to the to the global systems paper that we implemented already in December after the November meeting. These are all the items that were pending at this stage.
Thank you, Bastian. So where can we find the updated global reporting systems paper for the minor amendment at the November meeting?
That should have been posted to you already in December, if I'm not mistaken. Was this update?
Does anybody recall receiving that?
I think we've shared it with the update. If not, I will go back to the team. Yeah, but I can. I think that should have been shared with the updated lines. There were more smaller updates. Let me go back with the governance team, and we can confirm that after the.
Okay, thank you. Because once we have that final version, we can communicate it. Thanks. So and then I see there are no recent policy.
On policy, that there are no recent submissions that have been made by the policy team and that the standards team was involved in.
No recent developments to update us on of
nothing in terms of, I mean, the next bigger consultation that is coming up, if the schedule is kept, is on the simplified ESRS and that is currently scheduled to be held in the second quarter of this year.
Okay.
That's the next bigger policy development, I think, in terms of public submission that GI would need to make.
Thank you very much. So that takes us to the sector standard project for financial services, and
Claire is
Claire?
joining. So, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Carol and members of the GSSB. A very short update from the sector standard project for financial services today. We have just had some sort of background changes in the last months in terms of the organisations at which technical committee members are employed, and this then changes the constituency that they represent on the technical committee. So you'll see there on capital markets, the constituency of representatives from the investment institutions has gone from 5 to 3, and the representatives of the mediating institutions has gone from 2 to 4. So still a good spread there, and not seeing a problem in terms of representation. And the other update is we've had one resignation from a member in the banking technical committee that was representing investment institutions for personal reasons. And since we're at sort of the final stages of developing these standards, and there's really only one touch point left for the technical committee members, which will be the fatal flaw review in the coming months, we did not see a reason to replace this member for this very last piece of the project. So that's concludes the update from the project, but happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Claire? I don't see any hands, so thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, just clarification from Tomo.
Hi, Tomo.
Yes, and just want to clarify the distinction between business enterprise and the investment institutions. And for instance, banking sector, then if stakeholder coming from the bank, and that belong to investment institutions or business enterprise?
Thanks, Tomo. The line does get a little bit blurred for these particular sectors when looking at the business enterprise or the investment institution. But the resigning member from the banking sector, they were somebody working at an investment institution, but she had extensive experience within the banking sector. The business enterprise constituency would represent banks as reporting organizations. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine. Just in case of, financial institutions, just, business enterprise, whether they come from the non-banking, non-financial institutions, or it's even financial institutions could belong to the business enterprise.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you very much. And so moving on then to the sector standard for textiles and apparels, we have an update from Peter Dawkins. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Carol, and hi, everybody, other members of the GSSB. For those who don't know me, my name is Peter Dawkins. I'm along with my colleagues Julia and Vicky, I'm project lead for the Textiles and Apparel Sector Standard. So today I'll be presenting with regards to the public comment period that we held up until late September last year, and just giving you some updates and some outcomes from that public comment period as well. So next slide, please. So we'll start off with just a quick overview of what the whole public comment period looked like with regards to our communications, the events that we held as well, and obviously then the other kind of engagements. So as you can see from the screen, there was extensive amounts of email campaigns sent from GRI within our stakeholder networks, as well as also within the project teams themselves and our own project-specific stakeholder networks. There was lots of online engagement through our social media, as well as 2 media op-eds and releases. And then, as I said, yeah, lots of individual follow-ups with our own stakeholder networks that we built within the project team. Over the course from July until September, we held a number of events, some with our own GRI networks, as you can see in the Africa team, the Latin team, ASEAN team, South Asia team, all hosting and supporting us as well with regional engagement to make sure that people were aware of the standards and that the opportunity to engage with the draft at the time was available. And also we had other further support as well from individuals. GSSB member Tomo, for example, special shout out to you to arranging a Japanese-specific event, which is all translated by Tomo. So again, huge thank you, Tomo. So yeah, holding, and these were kind of spaced out over the 3 months that the PCP ran from the beginning of July until the end of September. And then finally, we had some sort of other in-person and other specific engagements as well. So for example, I traveled out with from invitation from our South Asia team. They were hosting a textile specific event in Sri Lanka. And I traveled out, and that was really lovely to meet. And it was in person as well. It was a huge room, like 125 people in the room, all from the textiles and apparel sector. So it was really, really lovely to engage with those people in person. And then we also had specific support from working group members as well. One of our members works for PwC India, and he arranged a specific PCP webinar for us for his textiles and apparel stakeholders out in India as well. So lots of really engaging events throughout the summer, as well as lots of communications and just making sure everybody who's interested and as aware as much as possible about the ability to participate in our public comment period. So if we go to the next slide, you can just kind of get an overview of what those events look like here. So the global webinars, they kind of bookended the PCP, one at the beginning, one at the end, and as throughout the weeks of the public comment period, we held individual regional meetings, in-country meetings. We had one of our colleagues from our networks out in ASEAN, Ali. She attended the Cascales annual event in Hong Kong in person, and then also myself, well, members of the project team as well, went to the global fashion agenda in Copenhagen, which was just before the public comment began in July. So it was just to kind of, again, making people aware that it's about to begin. As you can see at the bottom there, we had reached out to about 1,500 stakeholders participate or attended our events, or were basically registered to attend our events. Actual sort of bums on seats, people who actually turned up and listened into the day was just under 1,000, over 900. So really good attended. And obviously those who, I'm sure we're all guilty of registering for events to then just get the recordings or the materials afterwards. So everyone got the materials, everyone got the recordings of the events as well. So definitely had a really good engagement and attendance from all of our events throughout the few months of the PCP. So if we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So again, just a quick sort of summary of what that looked like, actual numbers, breakdowns. You can see huge interest in sort of those key sort of manufacturing markets out in Asia and Latin America, where there's obviously lots of interest as well as lots of engagement as well with our networks and also other stakeholder members. The webinars, again, obviously the beginning one, very well registered, lots of registrations for this. So as you can see, it's good numbers kind of throughout really. And then those kind of specific events, those in Japan and Hong Kong and India as well at the end. So just to, obviously you've all seen these slides ahead of time, so just to give some context to those. So it's again really, I would overall very pleased with the outcomes of the participation in the PCP. So we're going to the next slide, please. What did that actually break down into? So in total, we just got just shy of 70 submissions. Unfortunately for us, the 5 submissions, as you are aware, they have to participate in the sort of GSSB kind of privacy. So if they don't agree to that, they can't then be included. But obviously, we read those 5 stakeholders who didn't want their feedback to be publicly available, and those submissions were included and considered, but obviously not part of that publicly available log. Of the sort of just shy of 69 participants, I would say that the quality of those submissions were really good. Not only did we have organizations such as Cascale, which is maybe some of you know by the old acronym for SAC, which is the Sustainability Apparel Coalition. Then also Textile Exchange, UNEP. I mean, you can see the list. These are microfiber consortiums. So fiber fragmentation is a big issue within the textile sector. We also had manufacturing associations, the Bangladeshi Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Also participated and provided comments and feedback. So really, like the quality, like getting those names and those people interested in participating and providing their inputs on the draft was incredibly useful and thorough, and also kind of reassuring to see the kind of the engagement that we're seeing from these organizations as well that were participating, providing their feedback to the sector. So if we go to the next slide, please. You'll see just again a breakdown of what that looked like. Most of that was all online. Then we had one specifically via email, and then what that looked down to whether it's individuals participating or on behalf of their own organisation, and then again just that anonymity with regards to who wants to be public and then who says they wouldn't like to be part of that public log. So just again some further clarity on the details. So if we go to the next slide, please. So this is just of those sort of 65 final submissions, the breakdown of what they looked like into our constituencies, and then also what that looked like in geographic scope. So again, that really good feedback from those key manufacturing hubs, especially Asia, which is always good. And then the kind of the bookend of that, in the sense of being the manufacturing and then the end consumer as well, being interested in, obviously lots of retailers and brands are interested as well from Europe and North America. As well, those mediating institutions, for those of you who aren't aware, GRI has this constituency of mediating institutions that is quite an umbrella term. There's lots of groups that break down under mediating institutions, whether it's academia, consultancies, other standards developing standards organizations. So yeah, it's quite a broad term, hence it looks like such a huge chunk of the participants. But yeah, so we had representation from all the constituencies and all the regions that we are engaging with as well. And then if we go into the next slide, please, Jill. What did the PCP look like? So obviously back in, oh God, when was that? Must have been May or June last year. No, July, maybe early July. We had you guys saw the PCP questionnaire, but just again summarizing what that looked like. So it covered the 18 likely material topics that have been identified as most significant for the sector. Then clarity and practicality of the scope of the proposed standard, and then going through sort of actually looking at some of the supply chain reporting, which is incredibly important within the sector. It's an incredibly fragmented global supply chain within textiles and apparel, and because of that nature of the sort of complexity of it, it becomes incredibly opaque. So with lots of emphasis on supply chain disclosures and supply chain traceability, even within not only individual topics, but then also then broken down into other likely material topics to understand as well, seeking disclosures around how you're engaging with your supply chain and your business relationship. So lots of interesting kind of peculiarities to the sector that were included within those topics and the questionings. So yeah, this was again a breakdown of what we were seeking through our questionnaire for the PCP last summer.
Peter, before you go to the responses, Philippe has a question about the.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Philippe and perhaps others also have a question about the people who responded. So perhaps we could take those before you go into the details. Philippe?
Yeah, no, I would like just to know how this participation in this PCP compare to previous standards. So, for example, with mining or with coal or other standards. Have we received more participation or less?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of on par, I would say. I believe mining got in the sort of, it was in the 90s. So, and then I don't know off the top of my head what, because mining was the only other sector standard that's been in development since I joined GRI. So at the moment, looking at the, so yeah, mining got 93 in total, so we're just a little shy of that. But I would say that, again, like I said, from the quality of the submissions that we got, I still feel that whilst it might be down on actual total submissions, the voices that we had heard from, especially like the likes of the Bangladeshi Manufacturers and Exporters Association, which is a manufacturing industry association in Bangladesh. So I think, yeah, some of those high quality answers, I definitely feel I would prefer to get those high quality answers than just a big number of participants, maybe lots of consultants participating. So definitely, yeah, slightly down, but I've got my colleagues are furiously figuring out in the background the other numbers. So I'll come back to you later on with Felipe, just to give you some more context in a moment.
Thank you. And Rebecca, is your question about the respondents?
Yes, I have a couple of questions before we move on to the specifics, Peter. The first one is just to confirm that when you get private feedback, you use the feedback, but you do not include it in the reporting.
Exactly, yeah.
Perfect. Then the second one is, have you identified any stakeholders that may be missing from responding to the consultation that could be important? I think the answer is no, but just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, obviously we had a strategy of looking in and who do we want to focus on and make sure within those sort of constituencies. And I would say that, like I said, because we had the labor voices, we had a couple of unions participate, we had financial organizations participate. And again, the big one as well was the manufacturing side of things. One of the comments that we got through early on was that was there enough experience within the working group from the manufacturer side, because some of their roles weren't obviously that they were currently working for a manufacturer, yet often, just in clarity for that, some of our working group members are, previously owners of manufacturers, so lots of experience. So then making sure that we can kind of sort of answer or allay any concerns by reaching out to those stakeholders. And, sorry to keep repeating myself, but yeah, having the Bangladeshi Manufacturers Association, and we also, I should say, we had the Confederation of Indian Textiles as well, CITI, C-I-T-I is the acronym. They also participated and gave us their feedback. So I would say, yeah, no, definitely overall I was very happy with the respondents that we got, and I thought there was definitely, I don't feel there was any particular key stakeholders missing from our submissions either.
Thank you. Sorry, one more question regarding the consultants that participate. Have you tried to establish any potential conflict of interest in these consultants? And I'm referring to maybe some manufacturing companies are clients of theirs. So is that something we have taken into account?
We hadn't considered it in the conflict of interest, because obviously when we get their names, we're not aware of, without going into too much detail, of what their backgrounds are. But I would say, the summary of the overall kind of respondents is that even the consultants, they were very positive to the response and actually seeking kind of further strengthening of rather than trying to water down or mitigate, kind of making it easier maybe for their organizations in the future, thinking if that's the sort of the conflict coming up. So I would say even from the consultants coming in, they were very positive to the standard being in development and actually seeking more strengthening, I would say, some of the disclosures to make it, I would say, more, I don't want to say complicated to report, but definitely making sure that those organizations that are reporting their impacts and making that transparency available. So yeah, like I said, unable to ascertain specific conflict of interest, but I wouldn't be overly concerned by that, because I said a lot of the voices, even from the mediating institutions, were positive and saying, go further, go further. So I would say that was a positive thing.
Thank you all. Peter, with regard to all of the webinars, the global and regional webinars, were they all one way, just a presentation about the exposure draft?
No, we had every one of them had a Q&A section at the end. So we had chats open as well in the side, and then we didn't, for the bigger ones, obviously you don't let people have microphones when there's like 200 people participating, but the chats were open and we had specific Q&A sections, and then we had guest speakers come to each webinar as well, and then so they could answer questions, and so we often even had pre-prescribed questions. So if there was having to get the audience engaging. So we even started those as well. So yeah, it wasn't just one way; it was both ways.
So are you able to glean any information from that, from the chat there about how people feel about the exposure drafts, or are you relying solely on the responses to the survey?
So obviously at the time, especially at the global ones, the exposure draft has only been out maybe a couple of days. So people are participating in these webinars to kind of understand more about what the standard includes, and it wasn't necessarily garnering kind of answers through this. But I would say that thinking back to the kind of the questions that we asked, it was thinking about who's in scope. That was a big question that came. The difference for our sector standard beyond previous sector standards that have been developed is that we are looking at the kind of middle to end of the supply chain, whereas a lot of it has been primary extractives. We're going from manufacturers through to retail is the scope. So lots of questions around, I'm this type of manufacturer, am I in scope? Could this be applicable to me? Is this applicable to my country? So lots of scope clarification questions. And I would say that there wasn't any particularly I would say, nothing that would then be used for further development of the standard came up during those webinars. More sort of clarifications and interest in the standard, I think, rather than those types of questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions on the responses and so on, so we'll let you go on. Thank you, Peter.
No worries, thank you. Okay, I think I've talked through this slide. So if we go to the next slide, please, Jill. Thank you. So the outcomes, what came back from, so this again, just a high levels sort of analysis of what those submissions were. So we looked at this, like I said, lots of questions about scope came in, even not only through the kind of the Q&A and the webinars, but also in the submissions, understanding what's included, what's excluded, especially, what types of, lots of questions, because depending on what kind of manufacturer you are in the sector, some people are like, well, am I included? Is ginning and spinning included? Because they're type. So yeah, lots of questions around that. But yeah, even though for those, whilst there was lots of questions, we did have a question like, do you think that the scope is clear? 80% responded saying yes, we thought the scope was clear. So yeah, lots of good engagement, good majority, good understanding, but good that we still sort those clarifications. I'm sure even once the standard's released, we'll still have questions as to is this applicable to me? With regarding the materiality and the kind of the reporting model, really, I would say this even in the public events as well, really like positive in support and sort of almost, I don't want to say gratitude, maybe it's too strong a word, but excitement that GRI are entering this space and that there is a sector standard coming out for textiles and apparel. And I think that was that came up in the respondents as well. Overall, lots of kind of just markings about there's obviously the textiles and apparel sector is there's a space that has a lot of existing initiatives and standards, so not to increase the reporting burden, but the kind of the global nature of the GRI and the sector standard will be important, and that's something that obviously we took well into our planning at the beginning of making sure that we're not reinventing the wheel, so to speak, when it comes to the expectations of this standard. Obviously, one of the big things that comes up, I'm sure comes up for a lot of the sector standards as well in the development, is the kind of feasibility, especially for small organizations, to understand and to have the resources and capacity to report. So again, making sure that the expectations and the reporting is applicable to even for all organizations that wish to participate in GRI. And then, a few things around some of our topics that were suggested that to be maybe identified as their own separate likely material topics. An example there would be waste materials and circular economy. There was a few calls to have circular economy as its own separate topic. However, the circular economy in and of itself isn't necessarily an impact. It's a kind of a management mechanism for waste and materials. So it made sense, especially from our technical review, it made sense to keep those together for now. But obviously, this is maybe these, as you know, these documents are living, breathing documents. This isn't going to be put on a shelf and left for eternity. So we'll obviously come back to that maybe in the future. And then finally, with alignment, there's OECD's garment and footwear responsible supply chain guidance, which is heavily clearly referenced within the document, as well as specific expectations around supply chain traceability. And they also have conflict affected and high risk areas, which has then its own OECD guidance. So again, I think we really covered that well about OECD alignment. And then finally, something specific to, well, not maybe specific, but important to the textiles sector is the purchasing practices. And there is the Common Framework for Responsible Purchasing Practice, CFRPP. Again, making sure it's a document that's been developed by textiles and apparel sector kind of initiatives and organisations. So it's a really important document, and procurement practices is an incredibly important topic in this sector. So again, making sure we're aligning with the expectations there as well. And I think this is really important to re-emphasise that, making sure we aren't, like I said, reinventing the wheel, making sure that the reporting burden and expectations are kept to as practical and as feasible as possible to make sure the engagement and uptake of the sector standard is good. So overall, that's the kind of quick overview of the feedback. And then we'll move on to the next slide, please, Jill. So of the 69 submissions and 64 public submissions, that broke down into, it was over 900 comments. And this is what those 900 comments broke down into in their topics. So of topics within the sector, they have other themes I'll come to in a moment, but the cross-cutting, so these would be comments that are not limited to either a single likely material topic or a section. These could be applied to several topics, or maybe broader aspects of the standard like data availability, feasibility, implementation, rollout, those. This is what a cross-cutting topic would be, cross-cutting comment would be. And then, as you can see, after that, comments came down on the most interesting and most, like I say, significant topics in the sector. So you're looking at waste materials, circular economy, procurement practices, chemicals, water and effluent. So yeah, it's understanding some of the most significant impacts in the sector. It's really reflected in the comments that we received, and you can see how they're scaled so massively up towards the top there for those waste and materials and procurement practices. So yeah, good, interesting breakdown on those. And then if we go to the next slide, all the comments that we get are then, they have a categorization internally and how we categorize them. So this is a breakdown of what the top 10 categories of comments that we received. So as you can see, comments on, suggesting new disclosures, suggesting that the current expectations of reporting could be strengthened, best practice guidance, whether it's alignment with, OECD, feasibility issues, data expectations of reporting, how would we as an SME be able to report on XYZ, and then clarifications, lack of understanding or lack of clarity with particular wordings. So just a breakdown of what those 900 comments, this is the top 10 type of comments that we did an internal categorization of, and that's then obviously fed into the next iteration in the draft. So just a good breakdown there. And if we go to the next slide, which is the final slide.
I just stop you there, Peter, again. Apologies, I just see some hands up. So
Sure.
we'll take the questions now because they probably relate to what you've just been talking about. Jeff?
No worries.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter. When I first saw the slide, I thought this seems about right and good. Did I understand insufficient reporting to mean we were receiving public comments from stakeholders who feel that the level of detail we've requested in the proposed standard is kind of at a lower level, is less ambitious than what they would like to see? Is that what insufficient reporting means?
Yes, yeah, and other things as well. So it could be that we're not going too far, that we want to see more reporting on this particular topic, or that there would be the disclosure that you have on this can go further. So rather than sort of business relationships, you can ask for supply chain. So rather than direct business relationships, you can ask for supply chain. So yeah, it was again, this is kind of goes back to the overall sentiment, to a lot of the positive, and asking us to go further and strengthen this the standard as well. So that's what insufficient reporting kind of summarizes.
Yeah, perfect. So that was my understanding as well. So thanks for confirming. So I take sort of a barometer where insufficient reporting and feasibility, you'll never be able to please everyone, but if they're roughly in the same ballpark, that's probably a good sign that we've landed in roughly the right place. Is that a reasonable inference, or how do you and the team view that type of dynamic?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I would say sometimes we were maybe a bit conservative. Again, trying to balance out the SME availability of capacity and resources needed to gather these types of data. But I think we can really balance that out with the kind of reassurance that when you're doing your GRI reporting, that there's no expectation that it's perfect straight away, that this can be an iterative process as well. And I think for the smaller organizations, I think this is somewhat reassuring and understanding that, oh, good, well, I can't expect to do all of this straight away, that there is some data limitations. And also, again, going back to one of our earlier comments about supply chain fragmentation and the kind of the opaqueness of the supply chain in the sector, the availability of data in tiers 2, 3, so those beyond your direct relationships, they may not be so forthcoming because you don't have a direct relationship with them. And if you're a SME, you just don't have the influence to say, hey, can you share this information? They're like, well, I don't know you, so why am I going to tell you this? So yeah, it balanced out really well. But I think even then we included one disclosure about total production volumes, which is something that a lot of civil society has been really seeking, and yet business is often the pushback of that because it may be indicative of some of the over manufacturing and waste in overproduction impacts that are within the sector. So again, I think we've really, I'm really quite pleased with the way that the disclosures have been developed and the balance that we've saw as well between either being overly conservative and then now actually strengthening that out further. So yeah, no, really happy with it.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Jeff.
Anne?
Thank you, Peter. Yes, and my point also follows on from Jeff. And I think also it's very interesting in seeing that sort of request to strengthen what we've got, and perhaps also reflecting the fact that garment and apparel is one of the sectors where there's been most kind of initiatives and pressure over several decades. So as you say, how to ensure that we're building on what's already there in the sector, but also ensuring GRI is sufficiently demanding for this to be a credible standard in future too. I was just interested in finding out, Peter, on the new disclosure point, whether that was where, for instance, in a response, people were saying, you haven't looked at this enough, and then had given their own recommendation as to what a disclosure that could be included. So just if you could just tell me what the new disclosure category was, that would be great.
It's a bit of both. So yeah, it's those saying like, actually, you could seek more here, or others were, for example, the alignment with the procurement practices framework. So that has a lot of particular things that would just like mirror this. So add in disclosures that are in the common framework for procurement practices. So it kind of broke down into both. And then, for example, there was other requirements on some of the non-discrimination categorizations, like breakdowns of age categories, gender breakdowns within some of the reporting, especially in the supply chain elements as well, trying to understand some of the gender impacts in organizations' supply chain. So it was some of the comments weren't sort of like, hey, I want to see a disclosure on this particular metric. It was more like, actually, you need to seek further detail about supply chain on employment or remuneration and working time. So yeah, it kind of broke down into two categories there.
Thank you. Jan Dong. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, Peter. So maybe I did not get everything you mentioned before. So this is also a question regarding supply chain. But you mentioned that, I mean, this is a sector with a very complex supply chain. So there might be some issues with the data availability, but then they're asking for, well, they said it's insufficient reporting. So what exactly the direction we're going to go further? Is it going to be kind of more strengthening, or it's going to be less strengthening? How? And also, this is also related to the topic. What are the topics which could be, you mentioned 88% wants to have a topic scope revision. Is it also very much related to the supply chain question, or it's all over the place?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's kind of all over the place, but I would definitely say that the majority was of those kind of suggestions were around supply chain, because obviously when especially for data feasibility. And so if you're an SME, or if you're a big retailer, you might have thousands of suppliers. So the expectation today to report metrics on thousands of suppliers is I think it impacts on feasibility. So then we started generating, when working with our working group were kind of really supportive in this, is developing particular disclosures looking at incidents where you're in the most likelihood of most significant incidents to occur, and where the likelihood of the most significant impacts are to occur. So that could be your direct relationships, or maybe actually it's 2 tiers down, and you focus then on those areas rather than trying to get every supplier in scope. So trying to be more flexible in our approach as well. So I definitely say we was definitely moving towards strengthening rather than kind of stepping back, but being more flexible in our approach and focusing on key areas where impacts have been identified, rather than just kind of doing a kind of, I would say, making it the expectation of reporting lower, but across everything. So, which I hope will be really useful as well for that comparability as well, identifying where those major significant impacts are in particular tiers. So whether it's your tier 3 manufacturing has got a big issue with water or chemical usage, and then trying to identify that and then using that as a comparability across organizations as well. So yeah, it was a good balance. And I think, like I said, we've definitely moved forward in strengthening some of the disclosures. And like I said, even we've had lots of our business participants in our working group, even they were happy with the outcomes of that. So yeah, really positive in that sense.
Okay. Philippe. I get it. So it's kind of more strengthening, meaning that asking for disclose more information, but they could get the flexibility to decide how many tiers they would like to include in the scope, depending on the importance, visibility, etc. Right?
So yeah, we don't mandate what. Well, obviously everyone's kind of expecting tier 1 reporting, but there's obviously, we do then have that kind of expectation to go beyond it. But then there's the flexibility to go beyond your tier 1 and to actually reporting on those that are where is the most impact? Is it in tier 2, tier 3, and then reporting on those, rather than expectation you're reporting on tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, or tier 5, depending on what your scale is you're using. So yeah, it was more flexible in that approach, and then it gives that availability for SMEs to participate more readily as well, because then they can focus what capacity and resources they have on those areas of impacts as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you. Philippe, you've been patient.
I have some general reflections regarding the previous slide on the comments. So first, well, I'm very happy to see that some environmental topics have reached a huge number of comments. So we have waste, material, circular economy, hazardous chemicals in the top 5, 6. But I'm also a bit surprised that we have child labor and employment conditions with very few comments, like 6, 7, 8 comments. So I don't know if we have reached out the correct audience here, because I mean, if we ask the general public what the main concerns are related to the textiles industry, I'm pretty sure that the employment conditions in Asia will come as the first thing to everybody's mind, not waste or circular economy. So I'm a bit surprised with these results. And then when you see also the participants, so there were a lot of participants in the webinars from Latin America, in Africa, and Asia. But then we only had 3 stakeholders commenting from Africa and 5 from Latin America. So these are the regions where we have more concerns in the textiles industry. So the waste generated in the textile industry ends up in landfills or just dumped in Africa somewhere. But we only had 3 stakeholders from Africa. And then when I was mentioning also employment conditions, we only had 3 organizations from labor constituency. So I'm not sure if we have reached the correct audience, or if these are really the results that you were expecting. How do you evaluate this?
Yeah, I mean,
so I was thinking about this also in a similar way, Philippe, in terms of the number of comments not reflecting the perhaps significance of the issues. So perhaps it's also about the nature of the comments on some of these issues, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, so just to answer on that one, we were somewhat expecting this to be shaped in this way, because even though, and I think as Anne put it as well, that a lot of these topics have been well spoken about and are well understood. So, for example, using child labour, obviously this is a known impact in the sector standard. So it's not something that, and there's a lot of existing initiatives, legislation, and work on this area. So I think when it comes down to looking at this sector standard and looking at the topics, we obviously have our own topic standard on child labour, with our own reporting expectations as well. And then also we mentioned the use of child labour within procurement practices, because obviously home working is a big issue within the sector. So I'm not surprised by the results that we got, because it's that there's a lot, as I was saying, it's just the topics around procurement practices, like you said, on waste as well, and where that goes to, I think is really is the kind of current, definitely the main sort of topics that are being discussed throughout the sector as well. Whereas some of these other ones around employment, these are well versed, well repeated, and I wouldn't necessarily, and not sound too flippant, but topics that are people understand these as existing and current impacts within the sector, whereas some of these other ones around circular economy is a relatively newer kind of concept to the industry. So maybe that's why we're garnering more comments about this as well. So yeah, I'm not surprised by the results, and we got, just as on these points, and I still feel that the impacts and the reporting expectations on those other topics are still just as strong. For example, biodiversity is one of the newest GRI topic standards that we have, so the expectations of reporting there are good, and the standard itself is really good. So it's just I'm not surprised, but that I don't say that definitely doesn't reflect poorly on the PCP results as well, just because of the breakdown that we had there.
Yeah, so I think perhaps the interest will be in the nature of those comments as well. Susanna.
Yes, I just wanted to make the observation that this picture might be a bit more complex if we take into account that some organizations that take part in the consultation might be affiliate based. So if they represent more, they could represent quite a lot of organizations, and then while they are counted as one, the reach of the consultation can be broader than what would be reflected by the number, but it's just the general observation on the topic.
Thank you, Igazuma, and then we'll probably let Peter move on, I think, after that. Igazuma.
Okay. Yes, please. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, Susanna. I think you just mentioned a bit what I wanted to say. I think it's still more complex to just believe that it's these topics like the child labor one have been covered extensively by other topic standards. I really think that we need to think again about perhaps the framing, perhaps the audience and how we're reaching the audience, because it has evolved. Problems of child labor in supply chain have evolved. So even if previous standards have mentioned them, they've evolved, and fast fashion, especially in some regions, has gone to very alarming rates. So I think that rethinking how we are reaching the audience that might address, some of these disclosures that we feel that have already been presented previously, I think that will help, because a lot would have changed after the previous standards that have mentioned these disclosures.
Definitely, yeah. Obviously, the child labour GRI topic standard is part of the labour project that's currently under review as well. So that'll be updated, and obviously that'll be part of a future alignment exercise with this sector standard as well. So it'll definitely be incorporated.
Thank you. Do carry on, Peter.
Cool. Well, this is my last slide, so it was hopefully the last one, just to give you some next steps. the latest kind of iteration is currently undergoing. So we've gone through our internal technical review, editorial review, and it's just as of midnight last night finished its fatal flaw review with our working group. So that's now, and we'll be looking at the comments coming out of that. And then for the next steps with regards to submission for you guys for final approval, and then the publication and launch dates, these are all moving matters because of obviously we've got to wait for some of the Labour projects as well. So that's all TBC, but obviously you guys will be the first to know. So, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from anybody? Just on the issues around feasibility, Peter, were they mainly around collecting data from the supply chain?
Yeah, basically, obviously supply chain, as I've alluded to a couple of times, your direct relationships, business relationships is the easy ones. But when your supplier might be a wholesaler who then seeks from 10,000 different suppliers, it gets really
I
complicated.
understand that. I was just wondering if that's what most of those comments were about.
Yes, basically. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. No
No
worries.
worries.
Okay, thank you very much. That's been
Tomo
a
have his
very...
hand? Tomo? Or is
Did
that
he?
an old hand?
Hi. Yes. I have just a general question about how you analyze and all the comments. And thank you so much for very detailed analysis. And how actually, do you analyze and the whole, 69 comments? It's like reading everything and one by one, or you use more AI and there's efficiency.
No, we're old school here. It's one by one. So of the submissions that we get, all the submissions are then categorized. And sometimes if someone's paragraph has, every sentence might be to a different topic or on a different point, that's then individually split out and then separated into its own comment. We use this tool called Atlas TI, which then categorizes, and you assign tags to all of the comments, whether it's new disclosure or whether it's a feasibility issue, and then it has a theme as well. And then we use that within a big Excel spreadsheet and go through and make all the suggested changes, and track those changes, log those changes, and then obviously they are then pushed back to our working group as well, who then understand what recommendations have come in, what suggestions have been made. So yes, it's all very, I would say, a slow process, but it's very meticulous, and we make sure that every comment is received, it's reviewed, it's categorized, and we're marked as either completed, and an action is taken from it. So yes, no AI in the use of these summaries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tomo.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm sure that has been very helpful to members, and thank you to members for all your input and questions. I think that then concludes the public meeting, unless anybody has any other business. Is there any business?
Yeah, I just have a correction to make in terms of what I shared earlier. I went back to the team. You asked specifically about the global systems paper, right? And what we did do after the November meeting is we concluded the review in the sense that we brought all the feedback into a paper, and we've also shared that, and that was discussed with you in November with the communications department in December. But we did not share the version that is complete, reflecting the full discussion that you had in November with the GSB. So we'll do that. Just the one disclaimer: this is not the version that would come back with the visual and everything. That's still pending with the communications department. And I will provide an update on this also in the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
But we can close that out. There's really no good reason. I think we had hoped to have a closer turnaround on having the final layout for the paper, and that's why we didn't share it in December. But we can do that now. We'll follow up with the governance team.
Thank you. It would be really good to have that. Thank you very much, Standards Division people, for all the work that's gone into this. Thank you. We will now close the public session and move into our private session. And Gillian, if you could tell us